So what we tried to do is isolate goals, because I think that's the thing you got to do as a pro is you have every single year have to figure out, one, you got to know where you're at. And two, you have to figure out what you want to improve, and you have to have a game plan and put a team around you that can help you do that. And so with Joe, it was just different than what I did with the other guys. And this coronavirus thing hit, and the only thing that interrupted was our pro day, which he didn't really need.
Happy NFL Draft. It is finally here, and I'm so excited to be here with you on my podcast. Hi, I'm Yogi Roth, host of the Yogi Roth Show, and wherever you are, I'm sure you're going to enjoy this year's NFL Draft in a unique way because, bottom line, it's going to be unique as no one will be at a facility. Multiple Zooms will be happening with every team in the league, and we will actually be able to go into the homes of every single player drafted. And for me, that's what makes this draft a little bit more special than the others because we're going to get to see mom and dad. It's not going to be in the green room all the time. It's not going to be agents hugging guys. Guys are going to be connected, and I think that's going to be really fun. Speaking of fun is today's new podcast. It's with a really good friend of mine, somebody who I've enjoyed getting to know for the better part of the last 15 years. His name is Jordan Palmer. You may know him as he is an esteemed quarterback trainer, one of the best in the entire country, one would probably argue in the entire world. He played the quarterback position at UTEP, went on into the National Football League as a player, and has since been developing his ideas as an entrepreneur and also as a quarterback expert. And he's done that because the results have proven him to be one of the best trainers in the business. He's trained guys like Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Kyle Allen, Jarrett Stidham, and this year, Joe Burrow, the likely number one overall draft pick for the NFL draft. So I wanted to have a conversation around the quarterback position with Jordan about not only training Joe Burrow and what he is like, that's who you just heard in that opening soundbite, but also what he thinks about the QB position, what he thinks about the quarterback training space, why he decided to do that, and what his ultimate motivation is. Remember, this is a guy who is also the younger brother of Carson Palmer, one of the greats of all time, Heisman Trophy winner, former number one draft pick. So there's a lot that we unpack. It was late at night. We dove into it, and probably more importantly than even the conversation, we dedicated this conversation to a dear friend, Brock McNown. Now, you may know that last name because his uncle Cade was a talented player at UCLA, but Brock has been in an incredible fight competing against cancer. And during COVID-19, as we all know, we're on lockdown. Well, Brock had to go to the hospital, and he also had to be on relative lockdown. People couldn't come in and out. So a lot of my colleagues, friends, people in the sports, football, quarterback community have reached out to Brock, and we wanted to have this conversation and say, hey, Brock, this one's dedicated to you. Now, the joy of it is that from the time we recorded this podcast to now, Brock is out of the hospital. He's with his family. He's kicking butt. He's doing well. And we just thought of him during this conversation. This one is about the NFL draft. It's about Joe Burrow. You're going to hear Colorado fans about Steven Montez. You're going to hear about Jordan Palmer's journey and what lights him up. But also know that this one is dedicated to a certain somebody, Brock McNown. So with that, I'm getting out of the way. Listen to my conversation with Jordan Palmer.
All right, Jordan Palmer. I have one rule on this podcast, and it's to ask questions I do not know the answer to. And I've known you for a really long time. We've been around the Elite 11.
So what the heck are you going to ask me?
So what am I going to ask you? So the Sacramento Mountain Lions.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even know that existed till I prepared for this. When did that happen in your life? And
you know what's funny is I'm like a hat guy. You know that, right? If you asked me if I was a hat guy, you couldn't ask me if I was a hat guy or not because you know that answer.
That's a bad
you know that answer. Yeah. And man, what I wouldn't do for a Sacramento Mountain Lions snapback flat belt. How did I get out of there? I was there so fast, in and out. Didn't even get a hat.
So it's Arena League, I'm assuming?
No, it was United Football League, UFL.
Wow.
I was there for about 48 hours. Denny Green was the coach.
Rest in peace.
I had gotten cut. I don't remember which team. And then they said, hey, come here. You're going to start. And at any point you could leave and go if the NFL calls. And I was like, I don't remember how we weighed the pros and cons of it, but I was like, all right, I'll go check it out. So, I mean, you're talking about like the longest yard setup, right? For like dirt field and all that stuff, right? And I go there, and in practice, first day, we're like in pads, and this defensive end just smokes me from behind in practice. And everybody daps him up, and coach, and everybody said, good hit. And I was like, wait, we're like live in practice? And nobody really answered me. Next play, nobody blocks anybody. I get smoked again. And I'm like, what is this league? And then all of a sudden, this guy's not going to get paid. That guy, and it was just one of those things. I was there for, I think, about 48 hours. So there you go. That's the first time media, anything I've ever talked about the Sacramento Mountain Lions, but there you go.
I didn't even know that existed, so I appreciate that. I mean, we've had, just to give people some context here, the Elite 11's been going on since 1999. If you don't know the Elite 11 and you follow football, you live under a rock. But for those that don't follow football, think American Idol for high school quarterbacks. Jordan, you were like a wide-out ball boy, obviously quarterback, counselor, coach. You've been a part of it for a really long time. So I want to kind of start off there. Because it's, I talked about a little bit in the open. You're training Joe Burrow. You're gearing up for the draft. You've had all the dudes, right? Sam Darnold. We'll get into some of these guys that you trained in the past. But what about the high school thing you keep coming back to? Because you do tour when the Elite 11's up and go to college towns, NFL towns. And, you don't just recruit, or you don't just train the elite. You're working with 100 guys, and maybe 5 of them are going to major college football. So I'm just kind of curious for the why behind, your desire to be a part of that thing.
Yeah,
on the regional front.
Well, I think the Elite 11 for a lot of folks, you're probably in this category with me. That might be it. But Elite 11 isn't like a thing that I do. It's like a part of me. And with me, I was in 7th grade in 1999. And my dad had read about it in Student Sports Magazine. The Andy Bark started, and he dropped me off, filled up water bottles and shag balls, and hung out. And I think David Carr, not Derek Carr, David Carr, I think was a counselor that year with Drew Brees and my brother, and, Rohan Davey from LSU. LSU fans don't remember that name. And so it was just one of those deals. And me and Jamarcus Russell were ball boys as sophomores in high school. I just had kind of always been around it. And so I went from the little kid who wanted to be in it, the guy who tried out and didn't make it, to counselor twice. And when I was playing in the league, I would go to all the regionals because we were in OTAs. And I remember playing for the Bears. People being like, dude, what are you doing this weekend? I'm like, going to Miami. Like, what do you mean going to Miami? Like, with who? With your wife? Like, my wife? Like, no, I'm going to do a high school football camp. It's going to be awesome. And it was so rad. And so it's just become a part of who I am. And as I've kind of built my own different thing in QB Summit, I just love the high school age. I as you mentioned, I've got a chance to work with some amazing guys and some like famous, rich quarterbacks. But I love working with high school guys. I think high school is when you're figuring out who you are, what you believe, what you don't believe. It's everything. It used to be purer than it is. So youth is the purest form of it. But, it all comes down to this year, everything when you're in high school. And I just think it's the most fun I ever had playing football. Looking back on it was, my sophomore year when I played a bunch of positions on the JV team and just never left the field. And quarterback was not one of those positions. And then my senior year, just my buddies, and we won a state championship and all that. And like, those are just the 2 coolest, most fun years I ever played in football. And so if I can pour into that and it's not even if I can help guys in it, it's selfish. If I can be a part of it, even if just checking in with the parents during the season and hear about the kids and checking stats, like then high school's kind of always been like that for me.
Yeah, it's a really special space. And I want to take that moment to thank you, because I've been in it since 2009 when I finished coaching. My first year was Jake Heaps. And every year it's been fun to host and coach. And it's really this kind of like playground, And then as we've gotten older and we've gotten married and have kids, it's kind of like the guys retreat to a certain degree. Like, we've had like lifelong friends now become coaches. But you brought a really fun part to Elite 11, and I'm so grateful for it, which is NEGU, an organization, stands for Never Ever Give Up, kids fighting against cancer. And so much so that I want to dedicate this episode to a young man named Brock, McCown, who is a special dude. He's competing his ass off right now. We've all been talking to him. They lead 11 coaches, and he's currently in hospital. And here we are amid COVID-19. He's going through stem cell transplants. We've all connected with him, and nobody can really be there. And I've been talking to him like, hey, we're going to try to give you something to listen to that's worthwhile, that you can enjoy. So I want you to talk about Nigu for a second, but also bring it in this conversation, because Brock's going to be listening to this one. Okay.
What's up, Brock?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Similar to kind of what high school football has meant to me and the impact that it's had on me. And really it's almost just been that it's more fun, or I'm more passionate about it. It's not necessarily literally cooler. It's not necessarily more lucrative. It's not necessarily more exciting. It just means more, right? I don't know how to score it other than that. And I've got a chance to work with some really cool foundations and serve in just all different kind of communities. I grew up with a great family. Then they asked us to serve growing up. And so, but what Nigu selfishly has been for me has been an opportunity to be around. It's not just the kids, be around some incredible stories of courage and, just battling through adversity, love, a different definition of love. You just got to love people differently amongst chaos. And I think a lot of people are going to learn that the hard way right now. And we may be two of them amongst all this chaos and everything from COVID-19. And, but what I've gotten from working with the Jesse Reese Foundation, and whether it's been hospital visits or just hearing stories, is just a couple of new definitions of what does it mean to be courageous? What does it mean to be brave? What does it mean to really truly love somebody? And what does faith mean? And I've just learned a ton. And what's so cool about it is I haven't really spent time in this capacity with anyone who's battling cancer who's even remotely close to being my age. These are all young people, and the parents and the siblings that go through it too, and have their own, story and experiences. And so for me, it's just been, it's almost been like school in terms of how to fill up in those areas and continue to evolve and learn. And so, I feel like I've made an impact in some people's lives for sure. And, but more than anything, I mean, again, it's so cheesy to be like, oh, I've gotten more out of it than I could ever give them. But it's just the case. I feel like I've just learned like a ton. And it also, over time has empowered me to have tougher conversations, talk to parents more, keep it more real than, hey, Nigu, or hope everything will be fine. Like, have real conversations with people. And so the more experience I get, just like anything, the more experience I get at dealing with the hard conversations and some of those rooms are difficult. There's people going through gnarly stuff, and it's scary. It's scary for no matter who's in the room. And so for me, it's been amazing just to witness just courage and love and all those things on a different level than anybody experiences on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So let's lean into that a little bit. People who, whether they see you on the NFL Network or getting interviewed around the draft, so this is a time of the year where you have a lot of coverage, or saw you last year as you got into broadcasting, you were calling games on Fox Sports, college football, but they immediately get to know, Jordan Palmer, he Carson's brother, right? Like that's a jumping off point in the sports world. But I want to know, like, when you were a kid, like, what was the relationship like with the word love, with the word work, with the word grit, and how did you eventually forge your own identity in that regard?
I think early on, I really tried to forge my own identity, and the shadow was really heavy when I was little, like high school and middle school. College, it was heavy after he won the Heisman. So he won the Heisman my redshirt freshman year. But I was in El Paso, Texas. So it's not like I went to UCLA, right down the street. Every single person's already seen him play. They all know him. So I think as I got older, the shadow then I ended up backing him up in Cincinnati. So it's just kind of like an up and down thing in terms of the shadow. But, you know, for me, the part that always, if it was ever difficult, made it tolerable was that it wasn't that he was like a pretty good example of how to do it, or like a great player and a pretty good guy too. You know, he was incredible as a player, but he was like the best example of how to lead, how to work. His definition of toughness is the same as whoever the toughest tough guys are. Like humility. I haven't really been around any superstars that are that humble, like from a genuine humility standpoint, not from a saying the right thing standpoint. So for me, because I witnessed all those things, like the leadership, the way he could connect with people, how just funny and cool he is, self-deprecating, just all this stuff, right? Everyone saw that like he could throw the ball over that mountain and had cool muscles and ran fast and, you know, won the Heisman and all these awards and stuff. Like everyone knew that, but his teammates and really me, his family and stuff got to see the other stuff. So I was just always more impressed by that than I was the result. And for that didn't feel like a shadow. That felt like a goal, you know, and somebody wanted to emulate. And so whenever it was hard, and I don't even remember, you know, this year was a really hard year and that year was a tough year. But the saving grace for me was always the fact that if there's positives and there's negatives, but the positives, you know, completely outweigh the negatives to the point where I didn't even really let it affect anything.
An interesting word. You said shadow. So you know, if we think about it, and we play games with our kids with shadows all the time, but if here you are and I'm blocking you, right, and I'm this shadow over you, at some point I move and the light shines on you. Do you feel as though, you know, your observation of him and how putting the things you learned into practice prepared you for when the light came? Because the light has shined on you later in your life than it shined on Carson. At least in my eyes.
Yeah, I think it's funny. Like most players, they retire and they become slowly or rapidly less and less relevant over time. And I was completely irrelevant as a player, so there was nowhere to go but up. But yeah, I feel like for me, when I realized that I could explain this better than I could do it, and that's okay, is when things started to go for me. And it's not that like it was a work ethic thing. It was like doors started to open, you know, and people started getting introduced to me. Also, I started playing better. I started not freaking out about little things, and I started playing freer. And so once that started happening, I go, wow, the coaching thing's starting to take off, and I haven't thrown a pick since last Tuesday. Like I was like, all right, well, this is where I'm going with this. And so I just became okay with that. And because when I was little, when I'd play catch with him, I used to think that that's what it took, right? Like that's what college players throw it like, you know, or like we'd work on the offseason when I was at UTEP and be like, dang, that's how guys in the league throw it. And the reality is no, they don't. That dude's like way better than everyone ever at throwing. That's not what it looks like. And now I can definitively tell you that. I backed him up and a lot of other people. And I mean, he's like, especially coming out of the draft, I'll put this on the record. I have not seen one like him. And I've seen guys go real high. So, you know, I think once I realized that he was a unicorn, that was the other piece where I was like, man, I just started playing. I'm just not worried about that shadow anymore.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. I polled a group of people that know you, and I asked them, when you think of Jordan, what do you think of? And a lot have said like he's got this really entrepreneurial, creative spirit. And I'm curious, like, have you always had that? Is that something that grew with you as you were around professionals in the NFL? Like, is that from your dad, who I've gotten to meet a little bit, who has the side hustle as a photographer and he's got other creative interests?
Yeah, I don't know where I got it. I think it's absolutely true. I don't know where I got it from. I think, I don't have the, I sold lemonade in third grade and, you know, bought a tricycle. I don't have like that story. And I'm not entrepreneurial with like money like that. Like I'm not a numbers guy. Wish I was. But a couple people impacted that. I think impacted this a lot. One was Bob Johnson. So Bob Johnson was, Bob Johnson very well. He was my high school football coach, and that's like the 50th thing you'd say about his career. He did a bunch of amazing things. He was Andy Bark's first head coach of the Elite 11, really part of the creation of it. He did draft training. When I was in high school, I caught balls for guys training with him for the draft. And, but he also ran Camp Quarterback. I think he was like the first website that you could sign up for quarterback stuff on. And he ran a really cool business, had a lot of kids coming in from all over. And it all kind of ended up where he'd win a championship and his camps would be sold out and his sons worked for him. And his family was always around and his grandkids played for him. And I just was watching that going like, what the hell else is the goal? What am I going to go be an offensive coordinator and move every year?
Like, when did you think that?
I remember in high school being like, dude, you know who's got the coolest job? Coach. Like, what are you talking about? He's
a
great football coach. I'm like,
accent.
No, he's not just a coach. He's got a bunch of cool stuff going on. If you love ball, this dude does it all year round. You know what's crazy right now? I do draft training. I train NFL vets. I do the Elite 11, and I love working with high school guys. It's like, and I'm 8 minutes away. So for me to say that wasn't a big impact on the entrepreneurial spirit for me, I don't know. The other thing I would say is I just kind of always had older friends. I always connected with older dudes. And I think it was because I was always interested in hearing what they did for a living. You know me well enough to know it's not because I'm more mature than everybody. It was just like Wing Lam, founder of Wahoo's, 20 years my senior, has been my buddy for like 20 years. And he started a taco stand and now he's got however many, stores all over the country now. And it's just like, I don't know. I've just always been like drawn to those stories and I'd rather hear about that than, somebody's assessment of the Lakers. And so I kind of always, I ended up talking to my friends' dads in high school, what they did. So I don't know. I was just always interested. It wasn't even really about money. It was just more about, that's what I was interested in.
I could see that. So one of my mentors in filmmaking was doing Hard Knocks at the Bengals. And I did a documentary for NFL Films that has yet to air, but it will when a certain somebody retires, probably. But that being said, I was talking to him and he's like, he didn't know our relationship. He goes, oh man, Jordan Palmer, like he always had his hands in everything, and their mics are everywhere, better than me. But he kind of echoed that statement of like, yeah, like he had an app at the time or he had this, and you always kept the main thing, but weren't just defined as a player. And, whenever I get asked by young freshmen and sophomores in college, like advice, I always say, get 3 business cards a day after practice, focus on football, but don't let the game, as Chris Peterson would say, quote, like, don't let it prostitute you, because it will. Mm-hmm. And I always felt like you had a really unique ability to, probably as a player, I'm projecting here, but focus on the game, but then take advantage of what the game offers you. Is that fair?
Yeah, for sure. So I was in college, and I hate saying, I'll say this, but like I was a terrible student. High school, college, never cared, and didn't like school. I don't like saying that, so the kids think, like, anybody who, any of the young guys look up to me and go, well, Jordan, well, here's why I didn't care. Okay. I just knew the things that I had cared about, that wasn't going to be a pathway towards it. And for me, as I went through college, my dad had made a comment to me when I was like, it's like, I was always eligible, and I got a degree at the end. And my dad had said, he goes, well, passing classes one way or another, now do not cheat, but like, if you can figure out a way to pass these classes, then it's a pass class. It's results driven. And so some of the classes that I really didn't like, going to, and I really didn't like the subject matter, I really got to know the heads of the departments, and I did awesome things for them. And it wasn't anything bad or illegal or, selling football jerseys to the no, but it I just built awesome relationships and was able to provide value and do and I just kind of always was good. And it's not even a football school. So it's not like one of those things where they just gave you A's, right? It's not like that there. And so I figured out, I think a lot of times, if it's results driven, and how do you build an awesome relationship and provide value and, end up on top, as opposed to, I just saw people like study and then it not necessarily translate, or a bunch of people like change their major and go into a completely different line of work, Yeah.
It's pretty, you've always been very observant and not surprised by that. So what I've been observing over the last, I can remember Connor Brewer. If you remember him, he went to Texas, Arizona, ended up in Virginia. Awesome kid, great family. And I can remember his Elite 11 workout at USC, talking to his family afterwards. And, they were looking to get like extra training, like a lot of these top kids. And that's when it first clicked in my head. Like, cause I grew up in Pennsylvania. There was no Bob Johnson. There was a Curry Palace camp. Bill Curry was like our Bob Johnson in Pennsylvania that I would go to.
There is no other Bob Johnson.
Yeah, there is none. Bob, Coach, I would never compare you. But that being said, it's when it first clicked on me, like, I think there's a business coming, like, and not just coming as in like Clarkson and Bob Johnson as the only two QB names of trainers in California. I felt it, and here we are today. It seems like it's an industry. I'm curious, just overall, like, how do you feel about like the QB training space?
I think it's awesome. I think a lot of what's happening right now, and particularly with this pandemic going on and everyone just being forced to consume information from their computers or phones. I think it's just completely democratizing the position. And when I say democratizing the position, I mean, anybody can learn now. The main thing about quarterback has always been true and always will be true. The people who want it more and are willing to do more, they're gonna end up ahead of the people that aren't at some point, right? At some point, if you're just talented, you're going to get passed by that guy that I just described, right? So it's kind of eliminated the excuses of, well, I live here, or I can't afford that, or I'm left-handed, or whatever, or I'm in this country, because there is so much content out there. And the reality is it's a lot of the same drills. I'll tell you right now, I don't have a bunch of drills no one's ever seen before, and if you do my drills, you'll be better than if you don't. No, it's a lot of the same drills. I think I've had a ton of different quarterback coaches come out to my summit, and I tell them, like, hey, heads up, you're not going to see a ton of things you've never seen before. Now, the methodology behind it and some things that I believe, and classroom sessions, you might hear a lot of things. But in terms of like the drills, a lot of it, I sit on Instagram all the time looking at everyone else's stuff, and I look around and I'm like, a bunch of people are teaching good stuff. I haven't heard a lot of them. That doesn't matter. They're teaching good stuff. Like, base, yeah, I'm here and keep the cleats in the ground. Okay, cool. Like, oh, that's cool. And there's some gimmicky stuff, but that's fine. It's supposed to be fun too, And so I just don't. A couple things have happened where I go, you could say that they're a competitor because they do the same thing in the same industry as me, but I just think there's too many kids to help to feel competitive about this. So I just don't even feel competitive at all about it. But there's been a couple things that have happened where I go, wow, that's awesome. Like when George Whitfield was on College Game Day, I'm like, no way, you can be on game day from being a coach? That's amazing. And, Quincy Avery did a camp in London this year. I'm like, London, that's awesome, and Steve Clarkson has this huge thing and people come from all over. It looks incredible. I've just watched it online and all that stuff. It looks amazing. It's like, gosh, that's possible too. So I'm just encouraged by it. And I think for the people who aren't doing a good job and don't have the kids' best interest in mind and all of that stuff, like the smart quarterbacks and families, they're not going to work out with those guys. So I kind of like the way it's heading. And I'm sure if I paid more attention, there's some things to not like, but I don't really know what those are. I think kids are getting better. And the thing that's more exciting than the industry is that the position is changing. You no longer have to be 6'4" from one of these schools, have started 3 years and had you just don't. We got 5'11" dudes going number 1 overall, winning Heisman's. We got lefties playing at a high level from Hawaii. We got Polynesian dudes winning Heisman's. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like the game has completely changed. It's wide open now. Lefty, short, small school. Carson Wentz signed a $128 million deal for being the second pick in the draft. That guy went to North Dakota State. You know what I mean? Just, it's amazing. It's just completely wide open. And so if the entry point into college and the entry point in the NFL is wide open and coaching's wide open, then I think the best players are going to play.
Yeah, I can remember so vividly, Jordan, at TCU in 2009, I was with Mitch Wright, who is the old producer on the Elite 11 doc. And it was kind of like my audition day for the show. And I was watching all the kids and I was like, oh, it's changing. And you saw exactly what you said, because there was a world when, like, remember, like, the Wildcat became a thing and it was the best athlete, give him the ball as many times as possible. And then it became that day in Texas. I was like, the best athlete is completing the ball. He's talking about coverages. When I pull him to the side, he said he's been doing it since 7th grade. And you just felt like something seismic was coming at that position. I'll never forget it. It was, and I remember, like, Brandon Hancock, like, doing like 100,000 push-ups with his shirt off after the workout before we got on the plane. So I can't get that vision out of my mind either. One of our coaches, former fullback at SC. But on that note of the game changing, how has, like, your game had to change? Because, from the outside, it looks like a bunch of guys play well, their final year in college, and then almost like choosing an agent, here comes, like, who are they going to go train with? So is it guys reaching out to you? I'm sure there's a combination. Is it like, are you recruiting? Like, are the recruiting battles like they are for high school kids, like when they're picking colleges to go to? If you could offer some insight into that world, I think people would love it.
Yeah, I think my game meaning what I'm able to provide the guys with, that has to evolve every year, because every year these guys have to decide if they want to come back and train with me again. So the majority of the guys that I work with, they come back, and some guys don't and work with other people, whether that's logistically or I would say this is my first year where I've been available to train veterans. Ironically, it got cut short with pandemic. So in years past, part of it has been bandwidth, but I got to up that because I'm kind of, for a couple guys like Sam Darnold and Josh Allen, Kyle Allen, and Jarrett Stidham, been working with these guys for years now. And so what we're not going to do is the same thing over and over again. Now, we may have the same drills and check back in on similar things each year, but these guys are evolving quickly. And so I want to stay just barely out in front of them at all times in terms of whether it's what we're going through, what we're asking them to do. And with a lot of them, as they get older too into the NFL, it really is just about, like, consistency. Like, maybe the best thing you can do this offseason is just do what you're doing more consistently, right? It's not about learning a new trick throw, right? In terms of the draft side of it, it's probably mostly inbound, where I built a relationship with the kid and helped him for long enough, and that makes sense for me to guide them through it. I think, let me take a step back. The way that I look at my role is these guys are on a journey, and for some of them it starts when they're really little and ends in their 30s, and for other people it's shorter than that. But they're on a journey, and some guys I'm with them that whole journey, and some guys I'm with them the second half of the journey, starting in high school, and some guys I'm with them for the draft, and that is the time in that period of that journey where I can be the most helpful. And what has been huge for me so far is me not forcing that to be a bigger part of the journey than it naturally should be. Not pitching guy. I've never pitched anybody. I don't have an agent hit me up the other day, say, hey, can you send me the deck for draft training? I don't have a deck. I'm never going to make one either. I'm never going to pitch anybody. If it makes sense for me to help you at this part of your journey, let's do it. And if I want to do it, if I have a spot, and if you fit with the room that's already been established. So I would say the majority of it's inbound, but it's not cold calls from parents saying, "Hi, I'm so-and-so's dad, and we heard about you." It's a small world, man. It's folks that are introduced through other people, or I've met them at different things. And so I haven't really, I've never pitched anybody, and don't plan to. And then in terms of developing relationships with new guys, because I've had people go, "Oh yeah, you meet them at Elite 11." 20% of the kids that I've trained, I met at Elite 11. 80% I didn't. I didn't meet Joe Burrow at Elite 11. Josh Allen wasn't invited to Elite 11. A bunch of these guys weren't. And so my QB Summit camps is a great way. I have them come as counselors and get to know guys and see. It's a little bit of BD and, building a relationship, and a little bit of R&D and going, "Hey, what do I think of this guy?"
Yeah, that's cool. So how has it been with, this is Joe Burrow had what a magical year, right? I mean, I haven't watched a lot of quarterbacks where you get up multiple times in the game and you're like, damn, and every NFL coach I've talked to, and I'm sure you've talked to a bunch heading into the draft, has been like, he really had an insane season. So what is training the projected number one pick like?
So for Joe, everything was different. So he started a month late, basically, played on January, 15th, something like that. They got a parade and stuff, a handful of days later. Took some time, again, all pre-coronavirus. So just figured. So he went home, back to see his family and friends and high school buddies for a week, thinking that hadn't seen him in a long time. Life's changed a lot since the last time you've seen him, and probably not going to see him for a while. And because he should be right now, we should have his pro day last week, and he should be on a plane flying to different meetings and stuff right now, different schools or different teams. So we started late. Also, we knew he wasn't going to run a 40 at all, any of the pro agility, nothing. And so, and because he's the number one pick, and it's really meeting with the Bengals, and it feels like they've made their, that they want him. So we think about all the time that he would be spending training for the pro agility, 40 and Eldro and all that stuff. And I'm not talking about speed work. I'm talking about specifically for those things. It's between 20 and 25 hours of work. Okay. Add up all the workouts. And then you think all the interview training, getting ready to meet with a bunch of different teams, which every other quarterback I've ever trained for the draft, we needed to do that. That's about 35 hours of just our time together, not him practicing. So when I say it was different, it was completely different. So what we did is we put him through what would be his first off season as a pro. So he worked out every day with Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, and Kyle Allen. We didn't do any 40-yard dash. We did QB specific movement stuff. All of the strength training and stuff, it wasn't about training for a broad jump or whatever. He wanted to get to a certain weight. We wanted to increase flexibility. I work with a group called Biometric. They bring in all these high-speed motion capture cameras. They set them up on tripods. And we measure complete movement analysis on his body, quad to hamstring ratio, flexibility, thoracic rotation to the right versus thoracic rotation to the left, stability in the lumbar. So we're really breaking down the body. And then these kids from big-time strength programs, they're all kind of broken down. It's push and pull. These dudes are not – the strength coaches have 100 dudes on the team. They can't do it the way that you can for 3 months during draft training. So made a ton of improvements on the body. And then from a throwing standpoint, with Wilson, I test the spiral efficiency, which is an algorithm 1 through 100. 100 is a perfect spiral. 1 is terrible. We test the velocity. There's a chip in the football. Wilson Connected Technology. So we test the spiral efficiency, the spin, and the velocity. And we set goals of where we want to make increases. And all the drills are set up around creating those increases. And then we throw out a biometric, and we look at all the inefficiencies in his stroke and where energy is, where his center of mass is while he's throwing when it shifts. A big change is Joe played last season on his toes. He's now playing with all his cleats in the ground. So he increased significantly on velocity. His time of release went down. And so we brought data to the whole thing. Because otherwise it's like, oh, it was sweet, man. We worked out a ton, sweated like crazy. right? Threw hundreds of balls. So what we tried to do is isolate goals, because I think that's the thing you got to do as a pro is you have every single year have to figure out, one, you got to know where you're at. And two, you have to figure out what you want to improve, and you have to have a game plan and put a team around you that can help you do that. And so with Joe, it was just different than what I did with the other guys. And this coronavirus thing hit, and the only thing it interrupted was our pro day, which he didn't really need. So he got the full deal.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm so excited to watch his trajectory. I can remember meeting him in Columbus at the Elite 11 when he was on his way to Ohio State, and to just kind of track his journey from afar has been a joy. Another journey, and our listeners are going to love hearing about Steven Montez, as somebody you've been training as well. I've known Steven since he showed up in Boulder, called his first big game when they beat Oregon on the road. It was epic as a redshirt freshman. How's that development been for somebody who seems to have a lot of really unique traits, but had lacked some consistency collegiately, at least?
Yeah. He's a guy that I didn't see play a ton in real time. I watched his tape since, but I can't say been watching Colorado for years. And he was supposed to come out to a camp this past off season, which is, again, the QB summits. It's great for me to get to know the guy, you know. He just kind of tweaked his back working out like the morning of his flight, so he had to cancel like literally last second. It ended up not being a big deal, but you know, tweak your back, power clean or something like that. And so really the first time I met him, this was a unique case. The first time I met him was when he got out here. Now I knew a lot about him, and he's an El Paso kid, and I was at school in El Paso, and so I had met his dad before I met him, and kind of heard his family story and all that stuff. And so I think the biggest takeaway with Steven is everything from a physical standpoint about him. I think if you put him in the NFL right now, he's top probably 15 of the starters from a physical standpoint, from velocity, his ability to move. Dude, he's like a really good athlete.
Oh, yeah.
Really good athlete. I mean, yeah, he says that, but I schooled him. He's 4'6", but I don't care about 40s. Like, he moves really, really well. He's always on balance. He's very sturdy. And I think, you know, he, from a physical standpoint, like, everything checks out. What I've got a chance to see him do is really develop. I spent a lot of time with all the guys. I'm just like, who are you? Authenticity, the stuff that if you were down here, you would eat up alive. And what I've seen a lot of growth in is just really understanding, and it sounds crazy, but just watching guys really evolve and really understand who they are. And with Montez, you know, he started a lot, he's played a lot of games, but he's had a lot of different coaches. You know, he overcame a lot in his childhood, and to watch him transition to a pro, and the biggest thing that was helpful for him is just being around the other guys, being around these older vets, and Burrow too, you know, a guy who just did what he did and number one pick and all that stuff. Like, for him to be around that's not an atmosphere at Colorado. He hadn't been exposed to a bunch of big time quarterbacks, you know? And so I think it was this combination of, I have somebody meet with the guys once a week and ask them questions they haven't been asked before, and really dive into who they are as people, because forget football for a second, you're transitioning from amateur to pro. And so I just was excited to see a lot of the growth from Steven there, but then also to watch Steven interact with the guys and really take a step. And part of it is just, if you haven't been around that at all, a bunch of NFL starters who are super cool and super humble, and in a lot of cases, you look just like them. Sometimes, like, that's all you needed to see.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
totally.
I can do this. So there was just a lot of growth. And then from him, just from the consistency standpoint, it was awesome for him to just be told to do the same thing over and over again from a mechanic standpoint, because he's had different coaches, he's had different philosophies. And he's just kind of a baller, run around, make it happen any guy anyways. So, yeah, he's the sleeper of this draft.
Yeah, no, I just did a bunch of draft profiles for the Pac-12 networks, and I think that was my first sentence, like the biggest sleeper at quarterback in the draft. And I remember a couple of years ago, you told me the same thing about Kyle Allen, who we got to meet at the Elite 11. Look at him now and what he's done. I wouldn't be shocked if Steven had a career where when he gets his chance, like he'll grab it and hang on to it. Okay, so with that being said, before we get out of here, man, because I know I've taken up much of your time, I want to hit you on two last things. One, I've been broadcasting now for over a decade, and you just got into it. What was your first year like? And do you think that you'll get a second year in terms of the next couple of months, or do you think your second year as a broadcaster will be pushed out a few months?
Yeah. So I basically, for me, it started with growing up. When we were little, when I was little, my brother's 5 years older than me. He wanted to be Troy Aikman. We used to watch Cowboys games. I wanted to be Kenny Mayne. I didn't think I was going to the league until my senior year. So I was a broadcast journalist and major in college. I did the morning announcements in high school. So I always wanted to do something in TV. I just didn't know what it was. And then when I was playing ball, I actually went to the broadcast boot camps. I hired an agent. I did all those things. But the way my career went, I had business stuff going on, which didn't make sense to just bail on. And then my playing career at the end was like, if somebody calls, I get cut. If somebody calls, I'm going to go play. And that happened multiple times. So you can't go to a network and say, yeah, I'll call games this year unless I get a phone call. You can't bail on them like that. So everybody kind of told me, we'll just wait till you're really retired. So that just like pushed it back 5 years. It didn't push it back 6 months, pushed it back like 5 years. And so I stepped into it this last year. In September, I sold my interest in businesses and went all in. I wanted to do, really starting in September, I want to coach in the off season and do media during the season. And I was kind of open to whatever that would be. And so I kind of said yes to everything. I hired somebody to represent me, and I said yes to everything. So I did, NFL Network, Total Access for a couple of days. I did the Car Wash, I did Good Morning Football. I did a million podcasts and radio and Colin Cowherd and Dan Patrick. I just did a bunch of media and wanted to just scratch things off. And so one of the things I scratched off was NFL Studio. And somebody was like, well, why would you do that? Well, I realized that when I went on Total Access, you bring me on, you want to talk about quarterbacks. And sometimes during the year, the storylines are, why is Patrick Mahomes awesome? But the rest of the year, it's what's wrong with Mitch Trubisky? And why does this guy suck? And what do you really think about this guy? What do you really think about whoever it is, right? And some of these guys are like, I don't have anything good to say. I don't think this guy's very good. And this is not in my best interest to go on the air and bag on dudes. And that's just not me anyways. So cross that off. So I just started like crossing things off. And when I called, I got a deal to call 2 games, and then I ended up calling, I think 9 for college. And it was for 4 hours you're on. And it's a combination of all the stuff that you prepared and winging it and freestyling, 50-50 in my experience. And now I did it a tough way. I had a different color guy every week, or I was a color guy. I had a different play-by-play guy every week, different crew every week, random teams, all that stuff. But I was on. It was you can't hide anywhere. It was awesome. It was a blast. It's the closest thing I've felt to a playing game. And then also I got to know a lot of college coaches and college programs. And so for me, for example, I didn't know about Matt Campbell in Iowa State and what he's building there and the offense that they run. And I don't know, there's a bunch of kids that don't have offers that, that could totally play there and stuff like that. I remember walking out of Matt Rule's office when I called a Baylor game going like, if somebody has a job vacancy, hire this guy and back up the Brinks truck because this dude is a real one. And now he's the third highest paid coach in the NFL, like less than a year later. And so it was just a blast to go around and see those things. So for me, I love calling games. I thought it was awesome. I'm still figuring out the rest of it. I'm doing radio with Sirius. I like radio. I think it's fun. It's open-ended. I'm not big on Twitter and some of the social stuff feels like work to me. So I don't know if I'll go that route, but I'm just kind of open to anything, but I have kind of found my little anchor.
That's cool.
Man, the second question, are we going to have football this year? I'm like an eternal optimist. Everything's awesome. It's sick. Shaka. right? That's just, you know me well enough. That's how I live my life. But I think we're going to be in this thing for a long time. And I think there's a next to no chance that we have college football. And I think it's just from a liability standpoint, schools having to open up. There's 100 and something of these schools, students. It's logistically, I don't understand how with limited time people are going to arrive at a different outcome. Now, I am not an expert on this disease and our plans or politics or any of that stuff. But I definitely feel like that's just going to be a casualty, college football. NFL, I think, is going to be easier. There's 32 owners. There's a bunch of players that are really motivated to make money this year. And a lot of them make a lot of it. And there's just, and there's going to be networks that are going to not be able to air other things, and advertisers are going to be dying to allocate budgets towards things. So I just think that the NFL owners will figure out a way to have some version of a season. But these are unprecedented times. And yeah, it pains me to say that because I'm in the business of running camps and calling games. So
I hear you. I think everybody who was listening to this was like, man, this is amazing. And then you just went hard left turn.
I know. Well, you asked me the question.
I know. No, I hear you, man. I hear you. It'll be interesting. Like we talked off the air, like what a time to be alive right now.
You know what's crazy too is UTEP was going to win the national championship this year too. They were
good. There you go. Double down. I thought Pitt had a chance to kind of run the table. I was just back there.
Well, they were going to play each other in the championship.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, so before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, like, we are in unique times. Our kids are going to be maybe remembering what it was like to just be at home and not go to preschool every day. We'll be telling stories about this for a long time. How has the coronavirus changed your perspective on life? If it has.
It has not impacted me yet to where I can say it's had a profound impact on my life. I've certainly heard some terrible stories, but just on a personal basis, I would say, for me, like growing, developing, whatever, it's always just about changing your definition of things. Okay. So and you may have heard me say this story before, but when I was little, I grew up in a wealthy, Orange County, predominantly Caucasian area. And so when I played on the basketball team, I was like the tough kid, right? But then when I got to like 7th and 8th grade, I played on this like traveling team and played a lot of games in Compton. And I realized that like, well, I'm not the toughest kid on this team, right? And so my definition changed of like toughness, right? I'm like, dude, these dudes are way tougher than me. I was the toughest kid on the other team. But when I adopted that definition of toughness, and then I went back to my high school team, it was over. And so it was just nothing really changed other than my definition of toughness. And so when crazy good or crazy bad stuff happens, I always just think about, or what hits my brain first is, how does this change my definition of this, right? Whether that's a definition of humility or a definition of, like, my definition for a successful college football season changed this year. Watching Joe Burrow play. Okay, this is perfection is different, is different, right? And so for me, my definition is changing for like preparedness. Is that the right word? Preparation. I thought I was prepared for anything. Now I'm like going through a different checklist that I didn't have before. You know what I mean? I think what's interesting is, and I think rightfully so, the whole world's gotten super selfish. There's enough fear where it's like, kind of just have to worry about my family right now. You know what I mean? I can't worry about what's happening in other countries right now. And I think that's happening everywhere. Yeah. And so that's been kind of fascinating to see is, yeah, it's one big connected world, but it's also like everyone's staying home right now.
Yeah. There's a great phrase. I think it's a book called Shrink the Change. I'm talking to my dad about it. And it's about how, like, we all, if you're motivated, driven, athletically minded, generally speaking, you want to do some cool stuff in your life, right? You want to impact the world, especially you're in the media. I think what's the point of being in the media if you don't want to impact people? You could do it in a bad way, a negative way, or a positive way, but either way, when you open up the mic and turn the light on, you're going to impact somebody. With that being said, like, shrinking the change to me has been a real fun definition to be like, yeah, like I got to change like preschool routines tomorrow, like what are we doing for science class, and in one day, like when it's college football season, I want to call a game and I'm like, whatever, I'm going to change your perspective on this team's offense because that's what I think they're going to do today. It's going to be amazing. And now I'm like, all right, like I can't change how you feel about politics or how you feel about football or how you feel about a quarterback or a coordinator. Like all I could do is like shrink my change, and it's been controllable. And there's that like old, like overused coaching adage of like control the controllables. But there is something about that where it's given me the ability to just kind of breathe a little bit more in that regard. Because, if you watch the news every night, you're going to go to bed and your world's going to be spinning because that's the world we're in versus, okay, like I'm going to laugh tonight for a little bit, or I'm going to call somebody. I mean, I've wanted to have you on this podcast for 5 years. I'm finally glad we made the time here at 10 o'clock at night to do it. Mm-hmm. So those are some things that has hit home for me of like, just, shrink the change. Like I can't do it because there is no platform right now that's massive because there's no games, at least in my medium.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's also just been like a deep breath for a lot of people too. I'm hearing people talk about being bored a lot, which is like a lot of football players that are younger and have nothing to do. I can't remember the last time I was bored. Right? I got 2 kids and a bunch of stuff going on.
I want to be bored. Awesome. I'd love to be bored.
But I'd tell you what, like, so I got my 2 little dudes and they're checking me out on Instagram and like, we're ripping and running every day. Right. And now we're not doing things we're not supposed to be doing. We're keeping away from everybody else, but we are either hiking or on the beach or we're ripping and running. But I see people, way more people out and about than I've ever seen before. And I'm not talking about not social distancing. I'm just saying I see more dads with 3 kids riding behind them in bikes than I've ever seen on that road on a Saturday, And then, even on social, you see all like the activities people are doing in the games or whatever. So there's levels. This is a bummer on some level. Some people, catastrophic. For everybody, it's a bummer, some level. But I think there are some things that I've just been noticing in my community. More people out and about, more people with their kids. And for me, I've tried to make this because I got a 1-year-old and an 18-month-old and a 4-year-old. And it's like, they're probably not going to remember all this, but I want this to at least not have been this whole time have been a bummer and problem solving and figuring things out and stress. And want like, they're the joy side of it for me. And so call it selfish or whatever, but that's kind of how I've looked at it and what I've experienced around me. It's just a bummer to also not see family and friends and stuff too. That part I'm already over.
Yeah. No, I hear you there. All right. Well, it's been great to see you and talk to you. If people want to see more of you or talk to you, what's the best avenue to go do that?
Pretty much just Instagram, my name, Jordan Palmer. Very soon here, I'm going to be releasing something really cool from a content perspective digitally. Every quarterback will have access to it. And it's basically everything that's been in my head, all my philosophy, all available online. Videos, PDFs, and for all different ages. So I'm really excited. I'm building that right now and was planning on building it, but now I've shifted all of my focus to it. And I'm not going to release it until it's ready.
Good, man. I cannot wait to see it. Thank you for the time. That is Jordan Palmer, Yogi Roth Show. Make sure you subscribe to the How Great Is Ball newsletter. It comes out once a week. Just go to yogiroth.com. In the meantime, hope you're enjoying time at home with your family and enjoy the conversation with Jordan Palmer. Peace.